3 a.m. in the middle of the open ocean, you see something on the sonar that should not exist. Not a whale, not a school of fish, not an equipment ghost. Something moving, deliberately, at depth. You've been a marine biologist for 22 years. You've run 1,000 sonar surveys. You know what whales look like on a return. You know what current artifacts look like, and geological features, and the dozen other things that fool a system if you haven't been doing this long enough. You have been doing this long enough. What is on your screen right now is 4,200 feet below the surface, moving horizontally, with smooth, rhythmic, propulsive motion. Based on the sonar return, it is at least 50 feet long. At that depth, there is nothing that size. You watch it for 4 minutes and 37 seconds. You know this because later you will check the timestamp in the same moment you make the decision not to write this up. Not because you didn't see it, because you know exactly what happens to the career of a marine biologist who reports a 50-foot moving contact at 4,200 feet in waters where nothing that size should exist. You close the file. It sits on your hard drive for 11 years. You mention it to 2 colleagues over drinks at a conference in 2014. One of them nods, doesn't look surprised, says, "I've heard similar things." Neither of you says the word out loud. You don't need to. Ototus, the extinction that wasn't. Here is the story science agreed on and the crack running through it. Ototus megalodon was the most successful large predator in the history of this planet's oceans. It appeared approximately 23 million years ago. For nearly 20 million years, nothing in the ocean could challenge it. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Megalodon dominated for 65 times longer than that. Its teeth tell the story, triangular, serrated, up to 7 inches from root to tip. Great white teeth rarely exceed 2.5. Based on tooth-to-body ratios, paleontologists estimate Megalodon reached 50 to 60 feet in length. Bite force between 24,000 and 40,000 pounds per square inch, 10 times a great white, stronger than a Tyrannosaurus rex. It hunted whales. Fossil whale bones still carry the gouge marks. And then according to every textbook, it vanished. The Pliocene brought cooling oceans, shifting prey routes, and faster, more coordinated predators. The fossil record shows Megalodon teeth disappearing from geological layers dated to approximately 3.6 million years ago. Extinction. Case closed. Here is the problem that the textbooks don't dwell on. Shark skeletons are cartilage, not bone. They almost never fossilize. What the fossil record contains is teeth, and teeth only preserve in relatively shallow coastal water, where sediment layers accumulate in the right way for organic material to mineralize over millions of years. The deep ocean does not work that way. A population of sharks living primarily at 15,000 feet would leave almost no trace in the zones we survey. The fossil record cannot tell us what lived in the deep ocean 3 million years ago. It can only tell us what lived in the shallow water zones where fossilization was possible. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It is, in this case, simply silence. And silence is not the same as an answer. In 2009, a long-line vessel working off the South African coast hauled up a line that had been fishing at approximately 4,500 feet. When the crew brought up the line, sections of it were gone. Not tangled, not snapped through fatigue. Stripped, multiple hooks missing. The remaining cable showing lateral stress patterns consistent with something pulling directly and enormously against it. One hook left on the line had a tooth fragment embedded in the steel. The fragment measured approximately 3 inches of what, based on curvature and root thickness, would have been a complete tooth exceeding 6 inches. 6-inch shark teeth. In the modern ocean, the crew photographed it. 2 marine biology contacts confirmed it was shark in origin. Species unknown. The company never formally reported the incident. The fragment was never independently analyzed. Stop there, because that's exactly where the skeptics are correct to stop you. A fragment photographed without a calibrated scale reference, passed through multiple parties, never subjected to formal laboratory analysis that is not evidence of anything specific. Pacific sleeper sharks are real, living, and large. Fishing lines fail for mundane reasons. The story is compelling. It is not proof. But here is what is harder to explain away. It was not isolated. Over the following 4 years, similar reports accumulated from fishing vessels working deep water off the Chilean coast, the Azores, and the waters south of New Zealand. Stripped lines, snapped heavy-gauge cable, massive semicircular bite patterns on large fish hauled up from depth, none reported formally. All circulating through professional fishing communities, people who spend their working lives on deep water and are not, as a rule, prone to exaggeration. In 2012, a Chilean vessel working near the Chile Trench, maximum depth just under 27,000 feet, had a different kind of encounter. 3 crew members watched a large shape surface near the boat at night. Their vessel was 52 feet long. What surfaced alongside it was longer. It did not breach like a whale. It did not roll like a basking shark. It rose slowly, held near the surface for approximately 10 seconds, then dropped vertically, the way a shark descends. The captain filed a formal maritime report. The conclusion whale misidentification was issued without a single in-person crew interview. One of those crew members was interviewed independently 2 years later. He described 30 years working deep water in that region. He did not use the word Megalodon. He described it only as something that did not fit any category in 3 decades of experience. That is not proof, but it is the kind of testimony that experienced, precise people give when they have seen something they cannot categorize. This is where the physical evidence becomes genuinely difficult to explain, and where mainstream science has quietly struggled in ways that have not made it into public discussion. Sperm whales are among the largest animals on Earth. Adult males reach 60 feet. They have virtually no natural predators. Killer whale attacks are rare and leave distinctive, well-documented wound signatures, narrow bite marks, consistent with known killer whale dentition. In the early 2010s, Pacific researchers began finding something different: massive, semicircular scarring on multiple sperm whales. Bite arcs estimating jaw spans of 6 to 8 feet across. Tooth spacing inconsistent with great white sharks, which rarely attack adult sperm whales and whose dentition doesn't produce the arc geometry documented on these animals. Mainstream science settled on an explanation: Pacific sleeper sharks. This is a real answer, not a dismissal. The sleeper shark is a legitimate deep water predator reaching over 20 feet. Under specific conditions post-mortem tissue softening, the sleeper shark's flat-cusped dentition engaging with degraded blubber, the resulting wound patterns can appear larger and more dramatic than the living bite would have been. That explanation likely covers the majority of cases, but there is a remainder. A subset of documented wounds where the tooth spacing, arc geometry, and tissue damage pattern do not resolve cleanly against sleeper shark dentition. Wounds where the bite penetrated intact, living tissue. Not marks left after something died. Marks left while it was still alive. One researcher examining photographic documentation described the anomalous wounds as consistent with, and the language here is careful, institutional, exact, a large, serrated tooth predator, significantly outside the size range of any currently documented species in this region. Not Megalodon, not a claim of any kind. Simply outside the documented range. Unresolved. And unresolved questions, left unexamined for professional reasons, have a history of containing things we should have looked at sooner. Here is where most versions of this argument fail. And it is important that we don't fail here, because this is where the theory either earns its credibility or collapses into wishful thinking. Ototus megalodon was regionally endothermic, internally warm, like a great white. That metabolism was the engine of its predatory success in warm, prey-rich Miocene waters. It is also the single most serious problem with the survival argument. The deep ocean is near freezing. An endothermic 60-foot animal at those temperatures would lose heat at a rate requiring constant, massive caloric intake just to maintain function. The deep ocean cannot support that demand. It is sparse, cold, and metabolically punishing for any animal with high energy requirements. If Megalodon survived as the animal we know from the fossil record, it couldn't have. But evolution over 3.6 million years does not preserve an animal unchanged. It reshapes it for survival in whatever environment it finds. Consider the Greenland shark. The Greenland shark is a deep water predator, reaching 24 feet in length, found at depths exceeding 7,000 feet. Fully cold-blooded, with a metabolism so slow it moves at approximately 1 mile per hour. Researchers estimate its maximum lifespan at up to 400 years. It barely moves, it barely eats. It is almost perfectly adapted to cold, nutrient-poor deep water because it has abandoned the high-speed, high-metabolism predator model entirely and replaced it with something closer to a geological patience. What if the survival of a Megalodon lineage followed the same path? Gradual ectothermy over millennia, slowing metabolism, reduced aggression at the surface. A predator that no longer chases prey across open water, but waits near the depth where whale carcasses eventually sink, in the zones where giant squid reach sizes that make them worth the minimal energy expenditure of an ambush. A predator with a caloric budget measured in months, not days. An animal with that metabolic profile, with no natural predators, growing for 400 or 500 years. Its size would be limited only by available food and lifespan. Not fast, not aggressive, but something that does not need to rush, does not need to be seen. A 6-0-foot ancestor given half a millennium at Greenland shark growth rates in cold, pressurized deep water could reach dimensions that make the fossil record specimens look moderate. This is not the movie monster. It is something stranger, colder, more patient, moving through the dark slowly enough that it barely disturbs the water at all. Something that surfaces rarely enough that when it does, the encounter lasts 10 seconds and nobody files a report. Now let's apply the hardest test, because the theory deserves it, and so do you. Environmental DNA. In the last decade, marine scientists developed the ability to sample ocean water and identify the genetic material of every organism that has recently passed through it. Cells shed, waste disperses. Biological material leaves traces that can be sequenced with remarkable precision. eDNA surveys have been conducted across multiple ocean systems. New species confirmed from water samples alone. Whale migrations verified. Rare deep-sea animals detected in unexpected locations. The technology is not speculative. It works. No eDNA survey has found a single trace of Megalodon. This is the survival theory's strongest challenge, and it should be stated plainly. A 5-0-foot animal sheds substantial biological material. Even with pressure and cold temperatures degrading DNA quickly, a living population should leave detectable traces. The absence across multiple surveys is not casual. The honest response has two parts. First, eDNA sampling of the deep trenches, specifically below 15,000 feet, remains extremely limited. Collecting uncontaminated samples at full ocean depth is technically demanding in ways that are still being solved. Water column stratification means that biological material from the lowest zones does not necessarily mix upward into the depths where most sampling has been conducted. We have not sampled the trenches comprehensively. Second, and this is the part that matters, if deep trench eDNA surveys continue to expand and continue to find nothing, that silence will eventually become an answer. If Megalodon is alive, this is the test it cannot pass forever. The science will run that test whether or not we want it to, and what it finds will settle this question in a way that no sonar contact or fishing account ever could. Now we need to confront the most important fact in this entire investigation. We have mapped, with meaningful resolution, approximately 25% of the ocean floor. Of the deep trench systems, the Mariana, the Tonga, the Philippine, the Puerto Rico, the Chile, only fractional areas have been directly observed by human technology. 3 people descended to Challenger Deep before 2019. The entire floor of the Mariana Trench, 1,500 miles long, averaging 43 miles wide, nearly 36,000 feet deep, has never been systematically searched. We have more detailed maps of the surface of Mars than of our own ocean floor. We are not searching the ocean. We are sampling it and calling that exploration. The argument that Megalodon cannot have survived without being detected assumes our detection systems are adequate to the environment. They are not. The searches we have conducted are fractions of the actual search space, so small that the absence of a confirmed detection tells us almost nothing. History has made this point with regularity. The giant squid was considered myth until a living specimen was photographed for the first time in 2004. It was not hiding in the abyss. It lived in waters commercial vessels transit constantly. The megamouth shark was discovered in 1976, when one became entangled in a sea anchor off Hawaii, 15 feet long, in waters humans use daily. Nobody knew it existed until it got caught in an anchor. The coelacanth was declared extinct for 66 million years, more than 18 times longer than the proposed Megalodon survival period before a specimen was found alive in 1,938 inches waters, fished by local communities. For generations, if a 5-foot shark can remain unknown to science in accessible water, what might remain unknown in the one environment humans have barely entered? In 2003, a research team mapping the seabed near the Mariana Trench detected a contact at 20,000 feet. It was moving horizontally, steadily, with the propulsive pattern characteristic of a large swimming animal. Estimated length, at minimum 60 feet. The contact held course for several minutes, then descended further and was lost below the equipment's effective range. Noted internally, never published. Follow-up survey declined. In 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo completed the 5 Deeps expedition, the first verified descent to the deepest point in each of Earth's 5 oceans. During his dive to Challenger Deep aboard the DSV limiting factor, his external cameras captured something in the water column. A large shape. It appears at the edge of the light just long enough for your brain to register size, but not long enough to understand it. Based on comparative analysis, using known equipment dimensions in the frame, the object was estimated at over 40 feet in length. It was moving. It was not a geological feature. Vescovo noted it, made no specific claim about what it was. Marine biologists who reviewed the footage were divided. The footage is too brief and too distant to constitute evidence of anything specific, and that honest assessment must be made. But here is what the contact establishes, regardless of what the shape actually was. It appeared in an environment where we have almost no baseline for what should or should not exist. Our ignorance is not the same as our knowledge. We are regularly confusing the two. Every piece of evidence in this investigation fails on its own. The sonar contacts have alternative explanations. The fishing encounters passed through multiple retellings are unverified. The whale wounds might fit unknown predators that are not Megalodon. The submersible footage is too ambiguous to constitute a claim. A rigorous scientist looks at all of this and says, insufficient for a conclusion. That assessment is correct. But here is what that same rigorous scientist should also sit with. Individually, everything here is explainable. Together, it becomes uncomfortable. The same size range, the same depth range, the same behavioral signature, appearing independently, across decades, across oceans, from people with no connection to each other and no obvious reason to fabricate. The convergence is not proof. But convergence is how real things get found. You don't discover the megamouth shark because someone submitted a verified photograph. You discover it because something got tangled in an anchor, and a serious person decided to take it seriously. The extinction claim rests on a fossil record that cannot structurally detect deep ocean populations. The search history is inadequate to the scale of the environment. The biological argument against survival is real, but answerable over evolutionary timescales. And the history of marine biology is a continuous sequence of things we were certain didn't exist right until the day we found them. The honest position is not certainty in either direction. It is this: we do not know. And we have not looked not seriously, not in the places where surviving Ototus lineage would most plausibly be. That gap between the confidence of the official narrative and the actual limitations of the evidence, that is where this question lives. And it is a larger gap than the textbooks suggest. In 2022, a deep-water research team conducting sediment surveys in a Pacific trench system recovered something unexpected among their samples from approximately 18,000 feet. A tooth fragment. buried in recent sediment layers. Initial analysis indicated shark origin. The full analysis is as of this recording listed as ongoing. The institution involved has not published findings. When asked directly, a spokesperson described the work as continuing. A fair-minded skeptic will note that an old tooth can be displaced into recent sediment by current patterns or sampling disturbance. A fragment without full laboratory analysis tells us almost nothing. Both of those qualifications are correct, and both will be resolved or not when the analysis is published. The fact that it has not been published in over 2 years is either administrative or it is something else. The megamouth shark went undiscovered until 1976. The giant squid was photographed alive for the first time in 2004. The coelacanth was extinct for 66 million years until it wasn't. We have mapped less than a quarter of the ocean floor. We have sampled almost none of the deep trenches for environmental DNA. We have spent a combined total of hours at the deepest points of this planet, in the environment where a surviving Ototus lineage would most plausibly exist. We have not proven it's alive, but we also have not gone deep enough to prove it isn't. And until we do, whatever is down there doesn't need to be discovered to exist.